So I'd like to invite my panelists, Janice and Bella. Thank you. As you'll notice, we are missing a few. COVID got to a few of them, and so we wish them a very speedy recovery. But I think we're going to have fun talking about a few things. Let's start with something interesting about yourselves that they would not find. I'm pretty sure everyone's Googled you right now, Lauren. But what a LinkedIn profile wouldn't share about you.
Awesome. Much better. There's a lot that's not on my LinkedIn profile. I grew up in the Northeast. I happen to be a big music fan. And fun fact is that the very first concert I went to, the performer is actually performing here. So my first concert was to see Diana Ross back when I was a youngin'. And it is something that I'm very passionate about in general.
Thank you, Janice. And Bella?
Yeah, so I'm an LA native, which I think tends to be rather rare at this point. But I think something interesting is that I've now considered myself an amateur birder. We moved to a hillside home, so I've identified probably like 5 birds in our area, but I can nail the call of a red-tailed hawk. So pretty proud of myself.
Wow, impressive.
Yeah.
Especially in LA. So.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that little sharing. And so, if you guys are looking to start conversations, now you know something that you can start a conversation with. So yes, I'm watching out for all of you. Let's jump right into it. So we've already established a theme that is KYC, right? And if you talked about the sender identity or the sender of the message and the message itself being in a Gordian knot, that's the ideal solution. But we've made a lot of progress, I would say, in the last 3 to 4 years, making it harder to unbuckle the identity of the sender from the message itself. And I would love to start off by asking your thoughts on it. Maybe we'll start with you, Lauren, on
Sure.
that.
My thoughts are KYC is the backbone of everything that we're doing at Twilio today. I think one of the interesting things, even if you look at like a toll-free use case, for example, is we now actually have a lot of filtering technology that allows us to understand, let's pretend you're a retailer and we see you sending lots of different retail communications, but then out of the blue, we see a bank message go through. We can immediately start to block that because we notice that is not a pattern of behavior that is associated with actually knowing that customer. So there's a lot of areas that we're trying to take that even a step further.
Janice?
Yeah, so on our side, we are an application, and so we do conversational commerce. What we do on the front end is we really do sort of think about our customer acquisition in a way that really vets the type of customers or merchants that we bring on the platform. So before we even get there, we know who they are. We've seen what sort of social presence they have, how their e-commerce sales have gone, who the CEO is. We make sure that we know who we're dealing with. And then we are also a very we're very focused on onboarding to ensure that even though we know them, they know what they need to do when they get on the platform. And so for us, it's non-negotiable not to get to know our customers before they engage with us.
And you want to share a little bit about Wizard Commerce, the use cases?
Sure. So, Wizard Commerce, we are about 1 year old, believe it or not. And our co-founders, Mark Laurie, who is an e-commerce guru, and Melissa Bridgeford really had a vision about how consumers want to engage with texting, specifically with merchants. And so our product and our application enables consumers to do the entire commerce, both service and purchase, using text without link outs to the web. Our belief is that e-commerce is the way that it's been happening is about 25 years old at this point, and really do believe that consumers want to do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. And Bella?
Yeah, I think what we're really looking at is the intersection of identity and communications, right? So particularly as the sender list grows, it's pretty critical that we have both trust and digital identity behind those interactions. I would also say, thinking from a global standpoint, how are we supporting our customers and ensuring that regardless of local regulations, that we're supporting them in being able to achieve trust with their end users. So I think it's obviously a continuing conversation, but I think it's also really important to think about use cases. In a case of fintech, obviously KYC is of top priority, perhaps not the same in a gaming piece where we're trying to prevent smurfing, right? So very use case dependent, really taking an individualized look as much as possible and ensuring that we're in line with the needs.
So let's click down a little bit because you did bring up the point that KYC is different based on use cases. What would you want to share with this room in terms of the challenges we should be looking at and the nuanced way that, let's say, a retail location for a wireless operator looks at KYC versus an A2P provider or a CPaaS company looks at KYC? Do you want to?
Yeah, so I think there's also several use cases within an organization, right? So taking a look at really what is the objective, and at the end of the day, I think it's really important to think about the customer. So what are they trying to achieve? How can we make that as simple as possible? We take an approach that Telesign's perspective is really the objective to make the digital mobile world a safer and simpler place. So for KYC, we want to make sure that these things are happening in the background and still providing a seamless customer experience. As far as if we're looking at an onboarding versus login, I think that's another conversation. What kind of signal should we be looking at for one versus the other? And I think it's really about being able to establish continuous trust. Lauren mentioned earlier bi-directional trust. I think that's exactly what we really try and focus on. So at what point do we leverage it? Because there's lots of signals, and it's not always cost effective to look at them all the time, right? So really defining what those look like and having recommendations in each scenario.
And you brought up an interesting, the bi-directional trust, because you're not only trusting one time, but it's also, there's a constant revetting of solutions. And I might put you on the spot with this, Janice, but the question I have is, how open are you seeing your customers to the educational aspect of this? Because everyone looks at SMS, and unless you're an insider or been working for a very long time, you think it's like constant contact. I just sign up and send up an email, and it should be as simple as that, and it's not. How do you educate your customers on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think even though our customers are merchants, we think about both the merchant as well as the consumers as sort of our business, right? And so when we work with our merchants, it is making sure that they've already have a brand relationship. They've acquired a lot of these customers in multiple different ways, and just ensuring that the messaging that they start off with identifies who they are and really resonates with their voice. And along the way, we help to sort of coach them on ways to have those sort of service conversations that feel authentic to the way that they would engage with that customer anyway. Our plan, the way that we just do it, it's a lot of sort of, we speak the same language as the marketer, and we help them along that route. And I don't think that there's sort of, there's education about SMS, but they sort of get it. It's like, aha, yes, this is how we would normally converse with our consumers, and it makes a ton of sense to do it this way. I do think that there is education on the side of, on the consumer side, though. Their experience with SMS has primarily been sort of a coupon or a promotion or a link or notification, and it's not necessarily natural for them to have an engaging conversation with the brand that they know and love. And so, there's a lot of work around that in terms of just making sure that they know that they can actually ask any question they want and they can have that discussion with the brand and really get educated on what they need to do.
Do you want to add something to that, Lauren?
No, I think that's great.
Yeah, perfect. Now, I will stay with Janice for a little bit because, full disclosure, she was CFO of Easy Texting, my old company, and so you've seen the industry, if you're looking at past, present, future, go from almost a shift from shortcode based mass notifications to conversational messaging. And as someone who's seen the go-to-market strategies of now two industry leaders, how are you seeing, what are some of the same new challenges and somehow some things have never changed and that you wish would change?
It's an interesting question. I think that it really does depend on the platform and the use case in terms of the way that people go to market. For SMS marketing, a lot of that depends on sort of the size of the company and the way that they, want to attract a certain, buyers and whether or not it's a self-service platform or not. For commerce and for things that are omni-channel, it's a little bit different. And in that, yes, there is sort of, onboarding and acquisition using digital channels, but because it's a new business, there is a need to engage sales a little bit earlier in the process, or at least that's what we're seeing, versus some of the the applications that you've seen on the web over time. And I also, as I mentioned before, I think there's education, and so it's content and it's also explaining how it works. That's important in go-to-market before people can sign on.
Thank you. And this question is probably generally for the entire, all three of you is shortcode dead?
I'll take that. I still think shortcode is kind of like the Cadillac in a lot of ways, right? Like it's a beautiful use case. In a lot of ways, it's better than typing in some URL or scanning a QR code. Like it's a really pithy set of digits that you can directly start to interact with. So I think shortcodes are great. I think my caveat to that is, but not in every use case. And I think for a lot of our customers, whether they're ISVs, like for example, a CRM company who might have hundreds of thousands of customers behind it, is not reasonable to assume that every single one of those customers is going to have a shortcode. So I do think in certain use cases, like we see that a lot with retail, we see a lot with political, for example, shortcodes are the Cadillac. But I would not say that's for every use case.
And I would say for OTP, right? I think that's one of the biggest pieces is that, again, you'll probably hear me coming back to this a lot, but we really see identity and trust being a integral part to customer communications. So when I see a 5-digit code and I know that this is the 5-digit code, I always receive this OTP for my health app or rideshare or whatever the case may be, that's something that's helping me build trust in the company that's sending it. And then also, I think it's a branding opportunity on top of that. And I think it reduces surface area for spammers to be able to spoof or, have nefarious activity against some of our end users.
That's great. And then Janice, did you? Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about all three of you a little personally. Is you all are on top of your game. You get a lot of requests for your time. And I think, Lauren, you'll probably get a lot more requests for your time after this session.
I hope.
Walk me through your day. How do you manage, prioritize, and more importantly, from a perspective of when someone wants to get on your calendar who's not part of your organization, from the industry, and then we can just go down from you to.
Sure. My day starts with crying children, to be frank. So that is how my day starts. I would say, in terms of getting on my calendar, I'm all about value, right? Like if you can inherently solve problems for Twilio, or more importantly, my end customers and carriers and partners that we work with in the ecosystem, I am all ears. But I'm also a really direct person, and obviously time is short, so I like people who kind of immediately get to the value proposition of what they can uniquely do.
Yep. So similar, not necessarily crying, but cranky child in third grade. But the way that I manage my day and my calendars, not a surprise. As CFO, I kind of think top down. So I do sort of a quarterly look at the things I'm going to spend my time on. And I also do a lot of time blocking. So certain days are for certain things so that I don't do too much context switching, which is very difficult for me to manage. In terms of getting on my calendar, it really is, you know, I am open to both things that bring value to Wizard, but also I do a fair amount of mentoring, and I'm open to, you know, if someone says, I want to learn more about this, or I am interested in, you know, this is what I do, I'm happy to give a few minutes and talk to people because you never know what those relationships can bring.
I'd love to say I have I meditate for 20 minutes and blah, blah, blah. I think this is an interesting question because a lot of the time it comes down to work-life balance, right? So that's kind of where this heads in the direction of. I think that's a little tricky because it implies there is a balance. You know, I've heard it said about marriage, it's 50-50. But even better, it's actually 80-80. So how are we showing up every day to the best of our abilities, right? How can I support my team, my company, my customers? And that really means taking a look at, you know, what am I able to do that day? Being realistic with my time. I think that I've certainly been a person who's the list never really shortens, right? No matter how many things we check off. So just showing up to the best of my ability for, again, my team, my family, my friends, but myself. I'm a real big advocate for that. In terms of getting on my calendar, I would say that we are in the business of trust. So I'm looking for whether that's partners, peers, employees, prospects. If we have the same end goal, and we can make that digital mobile world a safer and simpler space, then that's a really good way to earn my trust and my time.
That's a great answer because I think the trust part is what gets, and this is where I get a lot of requests saying, "Can you make me an introduction to this person?" I'm like, I barely know you, and you're sending me emails saying TJ question mark, and that doesn't really endear trust. Talking about blue sky thinking a little bit, and there is this thought process that there is a grand convergence of all the mediums happening between email, text, SMS, and voice. What is some of the frustrations, maybe that's too strong of a word, but something that you wish we as an industry group would get together and solve? And I'll let whoever wants to go first. But, what's one product that would be great to say, okay, because, you can send a 200-word message on an email, but you shouldn't be more than 80 words on a text message. And so they're all kind of, you're communicating, but they're not the same.
So again, from our perspective of trust, I think that this is something we're working on, really. I think that, as I've said, identity and trust are integral to any of our customer communications. It's important to what we're really fostering is this idea of continuous trust. So not individual interactions. It's not just onboarding. It's not just an appointment reminder. It's how are we identifying who this user is in the beginning, what the use case is, and how that moves forward. Because, like you said, it's there are different limitations depending on medium. And that's where the intelligence aspect really comes from. I would say networked intelligence and collaboration have huge potential, and that's really what we're focusing on in a way that is able to provide fast, accurate, and global results. So how can we take that intelligence, make sure that we are advocating and again, a simpler and positive user experience?
Okay, thank you.
I have lots of thoughts on this. So I don't mind that there's lots of mediums and channels, and I don't mind that there's lots of different ways that consumers are going to interact with their channels. I do believe that identity and trust, no matter what the channel is of course of utmost importance. I think if there is like a greenfield area for innovation, which was kind of what you were getting at, I just want to see SMS and MMS capture more market share. That's kind of really at the simplistic end of the day what I'm looking for. And in terms of the barriers, it's kind of what I talked about before, but I think it's let's get really rich, interactive, MMS, higher throughput, group texting, conversational, like let's expand beyond what's largely a verification use case today and go capture that market share. There's lots of money being spent there today, and I think until all of us are sort of charting down kind of those similar paths, like no one company is going to do it on its own. I think we kind of have to do that collectively as an industry.
I agree 100% on more SMS and MMS. I also think that consumers demand that they get the right type of messaging, or will further demand that they get the right type of messaging in the right medium at the right time. And right now, what companies are doing is just integrating so many different platforms to get there. I'm looking forward to when it is not an integration workflow battle, and really just sort of a way to really communicate the way that they want to, without it being such a heavy lift, especially for smaller and medium businesses.
One thing I'd add too is, make no mistake, like WhatsApp is very smart about where we as an industry are not aligned, right? So, and that's where they're being really focused on two-way conversations. They're really focused on rich video enablement and rich messaging feature sets. And so I do think like they are taking the market share that, quite frankly, we as an industry should be taking.
That's a great segue, because I was going to go to that one next, because WhatsApp has been in the news. Last week at Dreamforce, they announced they were going to integrate directly with Salesforce. And I met Fred Hillebrand, the inventor of SMS, at the Wireless History Foundation dinner like 4 years ago. And I asked him about RCS. And he was not that optimistic. He thought WhatsApp would actually come and eat our lunch before RCS got to fruition. And back then, I actually disagreed with him until this year. I was signing up for an online SaaS company in the US, and they gave me voice, text, and WhatsApp as an option. And I just out of curiosity picked WhatsApp as my option. I was like, wow, this is an amazing user experience. So you hit it on the head, where like they figured out where we are not got our act together, and they're just saying, okay, let's just solve that problem. So talking about the future and the red bubble, the green bubble and the blue bubble, argument, do you see value? I know you spoke about the MMS, getting MMS transcoding right is important, but do you see any value in, or any threat, if you will, from WhatsApp coming in and not getting in the way of SMS adoption?
Big time. Right? I think most people in this room would agree with that, but they're being very aggressive. So even if I don't know if everybody saw the announcement that TJ is referring to, but once again, it's a marketing use case announcement. So they integrated with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, so that basically then if you're a Salesforce Marketing Cloud customer, you can use their CDP, get all your first-party data together, use their Marketing Cloud as that orchestration layer, and then seamlessly start interacting with WhatsApp. And that's both through a rich feature set. It's also through a two-way communication, which I think is kind of what we touched on today. So WhatsApp is here to win or take all. Make no mistake about that. And I think it's on us to sort of all chart down the same paths to actually bring that market share back, because WhatsApp is great if you're international, but quite frankly, in a US use case, if you give someone that optionality between SMS, email, WhatsApp, there's actually a very small percentage of the populace who will choose WhatsApp still. But we got to make sure it stays that way.
And do you have any?
Yeah. So it kind of reminds me of like, how long have we been saying SMS is dead? The numbers do not show that. I think there's a reason that it is as ubiquitous as it is. I think WhatsApp does provide a really interesting customer experience, and it's certainly something along with RCS and MMS that Viber that we want to be offering. But in talking to customers, I think they want to solve a problem once. And Lauren spoke a little bit about this earlier, but it has to show considerable value on top of what you're already doing to ensure that it's worth the developmental resources, right? I've never spoken to a customer who said, we have all these engineering resources, we don't know what to do with them. It's making sure that we're effective, and also from a cost perspective, I think it's particularly interesting. I know, along with Silent Authors, a couple of opportunities we're all exploring, given the rising costs of SMS, the unpredictability. So as the market continues to go in that direction, I think that it'll be interesting. But ultimately, I think we have to meet users where they are. So like the red or the green, blue bubble, admittedly, I do have a group chat of friends that is called Always Blue. But I think it kind of reminds me of a sidewalk curb ramp. So the idea is that, the ADA mandated that so that people in wheelchairs or, were easily able to get on a sidewalk. Bikers, people with strollers, rollerbladers, whatever the case may be, it really improved things for everyone. So I think this idea, like the idea of safety, allows ideas to really flourish, innovation to flourish, and that it's going to be like the best user experience is one that's most accessible and easy for all to participate.
That's a great point. And to tag on to that, if we were to at least slow down WhatsApp's adoption in the US, what would be, I'll see this because I have a personal point of view on this, the killer app that SMS needs to have, because as a user experience, it's not gotten an upgrade in almost 20 years, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel when I was building the solutions, and even now, the challenge is delivery reports. The blue bubble exists because you get this little comfort that at least it's been delivered to the device. I would like to hear if someone read my message or not, but no. As long as it's delivered, it's great. That's still not predictable in the green bubble world, even in MMS, where you have more device data. Mm-hmm. I've looked at device delivery reports from intermediaries, and I know for a fact that the message didn't go through at the time they said it. So that's my personal point of view, that if we fix the one killer feature, which is delivery reports as an industry, it'll go far in terms of fixing WhatsApp. Because to your point, Bella, people, at least customers, don't want to build for WhatsApp and for MMS and for SMS and for RCS. If we made the green bubble as friendly as blue bubble.
I mean, +1 all day, TJ. The thing I'd add to that too is even the slide I showed of the $16 billion that basically got kneecapped from some of the big players. If we don't have that data, it's gonna be really hard to bring that into an SMS, MMS ecosystem, because those marketers are used to, like, you saw the ad itself, you clicked on the ad, what did you do post-ad? Like, the more data feedback we can give, and the more that we can kind of enrich that experience, the more addressability, I would say, in terms of budgets we can bring in.
Yeah, and I also think that, there are aspects of measurability and data related to delivery, related to the metrics that marketers are used to seeing, mm-hmm. that we haven't really standardized yet in SMS. And so when you're speaking about ROI, and when you're speaking about how many views and how they're thinking about it, I do think that we have a little bit of a way to go in order to get that 16 billion. So they're like, yes, I can compare mm-hmm. this campaign versus SMS, and in fact, the conversion rate is exactly what I would have expected on this particular medium because I know the definition. We're still working that through.
Great. Well, I would really like to thank all of you for taking the time to come on stage today. I know I would love to keep talking about these things, and we actually have had great conversations before the call. And I want to thank all our panel for this time. I think we have time for one or two questions, Susan? Okay.
2 questions, yep. Carlos, McNair. going to be a trial maker today. Well, thanks for your bright insights. I have a question for you. I'm with McNair. I've been working on the last 5 years to try and help the carriers launch RCS, not just in the US, but all over the world. And the feedback I keep getting from them is that, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, we want to get there, but we're not really seeing that demand, that push from the brands and the application providers to leverage RCS now. All the while, WhatsApp is in the background doing deals with Salesforce, and who knows what's going to be the next deal they're going to make. And at that point, just like they lost P2P to WhatsApp in the rest of the world, they're going to lose A2P and P2A. What are you guys doing when it comes to RCS? Are you pushing anything out there? Are you seeing demand from brands? Do you fully understand the potential that RCS can bring to your customers? And what actions are you doing today to help the carriers kind of understand that demand?
So I'll take that. I do see a lot of value in RCS. And let's be honest, if you were to compare RCS against MMS, RCS is undeniably like a more attractive median. I think the issue I keep coming back to with all of our customers is that it is attractive in certain geographies that are Android dominant, where they feel like they can at least address the majority of their customer base. In areas like the United States, it's not as interesting, I would say, for most of our customers today because Android is not dominant. So, if you want to look at Germany, if you want to look at India, if you want to look at a lot of other markets, like RCS is awesome, and we want to continue to push that with carriers. But I would say in the United States, we don't see the same.
And I think cost is another thing, right? So really, what are the trends that are going to take place with RCS when it comes to cost? We see what's happening with SMS. It's still pretty unknown. Things are changing as it's, every day there. So predictability is what people are looking for, and I think that we don't quite have as much of that as we'd like. But I agreed with Lauren. I think one of the biggest things is penetration and what that looks like from a global perspective versus some other mediums.
TJ, we've got one more question and then that's it. Okay.
Great.
You talked a lot about trust, and one of the main trust factors in SMS and A2P is user authentication, one-time passwords. That's under threat by fraud. That's under threat by or under attack by alternative solutions like the silent authentication from Twilio and other market solutions. It's even under attack by the OTTs themselves and FIDO alliances that want to get rid of passwords altogether. So my question is, within the next 3 years, do you think that the market share of A2P messages being used to authenticate users is going to decline, to become noise, or do you think that it will not happen?
So we've seen a rapid acceleration of the digital world within the past couple of years because of COVID, right? I think that we've probably come 5 years in the past 2 to 3. So from that perspective, I don't really see a decline. I think that people are, multitasking in different ways where, and same with voice, like it's not necessarily an instead of, but an and. So what we want to do is provide an approach that allows for kind of a waterfall approach as to preferred mediums, with SMS kind of being the ultimate fallback. As far as the fraud perspective, it's a huge conversation, and yes, silent authorization, provides some protection there. But I think that we need to be looking at what types of fraud are we really seeing? Where are those regionally more highly correlated? How can we fight that from that perspective? Again, in that combination of trust and identity. So no, I don't see it declining. Do I see it shifting a little bit? Sure, but I think that there's still a lot more to come, and particularly given the coverage of SMS and the reliability, that it's here to stay.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you, our panel. And
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone.